A very warm welcome to this World Game Changers podcast, where your host, Paul D. Lowe, embraces many crucial conversations that compassionately contribute towards creating a better life and world. Paul's intention's very simple: to help get people's inspirational insights and motivational messages out into the world, so others may benefit.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to this World Game Changers podcast episode, where today I have a returning guest, a lady by the name of Sam Hales. Sam, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. You
may recall, listeners, in the previous episodes, Sam very bravely spoke around her cancer, and how for her the cancer was a blessing in disguise. Now, in a subject like this, which is so emotive, we barely scratched the surface. So I just want to pick up, Sam, from that previous episode around one or two comments. And one that really stuck with me was this, what I termed the British stiff upper lip. Just get on with it. Don't show, and these are my words, not yours, but don't show weakness in front of others and all that kind of stuff. And, you kind of alluded to that. That's what you got you through. And far be it for me to kind of challenge that. But challenge it I am going to, Sam, if I may. Because this whole thing around stiff upper lip, just get on with it, don't show emotion, etc., etc., etc. I mean, looking back on it, now you've come out the other side, Sam, would you still play it that way?
Yeah. I think definitely I would, because that's a very interesting question, actually, because you're still going through the trauma inside. Even though you're maintaining this facade on the outside, you're still experiencing the trauma of it on the inside, which is still going to come out at some point, and you're still going to have to deal with at some point, which I think now, actually, I'm probably, or over the last year, I think I've definitely been dealing with that past trauma of accepting the diagnosis, of going through the chemo, of going through all the tests, and having all the surgery. I think even though it's definitely good to keep a brave face, it's definitely good to maintain that air of being strong. Gosh, I was brought up by that. My mum was always, don't cry, don't show any emotion, whatever was going on, which I think it's definitely a British thing. But I think it carried me through every step of the way of having to be, it's fine, because I knew that I wasn't going to die. I knew that my family was still going to be okay. I knew that everything was still going to be okay. I knew, do you know what I mean? So, yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Okay. The reason I come at it from this kind of, I suppose, alternative angle is I know personally, and literally from the hundreds, if not thousands of people I've spoken to over the years, the power that goes with vulnerability. And, I was brought up and conditioned, big boys don't cry. But I also know that led to my break. I've had 2 breakdowns. And I also know that kind of just keep it in. It's energy, it's trapped energy, and it has to, and it will come out. And boy, I always use the kind of, some would say graphic example. It's like a boil ready to burst. And when it bursts, the crap goes everywhere. And in many respects, there's no apologies for that graphic explanation there, because, the lesson I've learned, and I suppose we've all got our own model of the world, but let that out. And certainly, and almost to an episode now, I seem to bring in that amazing American lady, Brené Brown, where she talks about our vulnerability is our strength. And I absolutely buy that 100%. I'm not saying that I'm right and you're wrong Sam, or vice versa. But I'm just kind of offering an alternative to, this whole conditioning. Like I say, for me, big boys don't cry. Those stereotypes, if you will. Girls always wear pink. Nice girls don't do things like that. And all this stuff that we're conditioned with. And it's part of, I suppose, my role as host within this to kind of unpack it and prod and poke and say, and that's why I ask you the question with hindsight now, would you still approach it that way? Or indeed, has there been instances in your life where you've given yourself permission to be vulnerable and to cry and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think when you've got a young family, it's a little bit different though. I was the kind of the head of the family, so I had to organize everything. I had to arrange everything. We had commitments at home. The business, I mean, we were working like 14 hours a day. And, we had a lot of animals at that point to take care of. I had a lot of responsibility on my plate that I had to take care of, and I had to run everything. I had to run the show. So I literally couldn't show any sign of weakness, because if I broke down, then everything else would as well. And I just couldn't have that. To show my family that I was being strong and I was being brave gave them the strength and gave them reassurance that everything was going to be okay. If my 2-year-old son saw me breaking down and crying and saying, this has happened, it's never going to work, everything's going really bad or whatever, then that would destroy him. That would he would break as well, and he would be upset and cry, and I never wanted that. I wanted him to see, oh my gosh, my mum's a warrior, my mum's getting through this, my mum's incredible going through this. And that's how I want him to see me in the future as well. I want him, when he looks back on, if he remembers, by the way, but if he does remember, I want him to look back on this time and say, wow, I can't believe you got through that as well as you did. That's incredible. So there's, there is that kind of thing, that side of things as well. Showing vulnerability is okay. But I think you have to be cautious about showing your vulnerability in this situation. From my perspective personally, I'm not talking obviously about every situation, but in this situation, I had to be cautious about who I showed my vulnerability to, because at that stage of my life, there was an awful lot of people around me that I couldn't trust. So I didn't want that coming back at me either. But also it was just showing that even though it's a really crap time, it doesn't have to be the end of the world. It doesn't have to be a terrible time. It can still be, let's just deal with it and move on. It's fine. Let's still go to the beach. Let's still go out for dinners. And that's very, very difficult. Even in Spain, it's very, very difficult turning up with a wig on in 50-degree heat as well, or with no wig on and having people staring at you, because the area I lived in Spain, cancer wasn't a thing. They don't know anything about cancer where I was living. So I even had to be very, very strong on that point as well, having people pointing at me and saying, oh my God, look, she's got cancer. Look, stay away from her. She's got cancer. So I still had to I was with my family. I still had to maintain that. Just ignore it. Don't worry. It's fine, sort of thing. From the flip side of things, showing vulnerability and letting it out absolutely is very, very important. I totally agree with what you're saying. With it is energy, it's stored up in there and it needs to come out, and it's going to come out. But I think knowing yourself very, very well and being very, very aware of yourself is so, so important, because you've got to know that it needs to come out, and you need to know how you're going to deal with it, when you're going to face it, because you can't, it's in there, it's got to come out. You can't just wait for it to come out by itself. You have to be proactive and say, okay, do you know what? I'm going to I'm going to go into a field and meditate on these feelings and see what comes up. And when they come up, I'm going to deal with them. Or I'm going to go to sound healing, or I'm going to go and see somebody that deals with like pent up aggression to find out how they can bring it out, or some other natural way of healing. I think you have to have a very good self-awareness to be able to seek out these things, to then be able to deal with it. I think also, going back to the point of having a young family, if I was to just let things boil up inside of me and just let them come out whenever they wanted, I would be an emotional wreck. I wouldn't be able to run my business. I wouldn't be able to work. I would just be a depressed state on the sofa, eating loads of chocolate, watching TV, and nobody wants that. You know, you have to take the time for yourself. You have to put yourself in that position to accept what has happened and to deal with it, and to feel the anger, to feel the hurt, to feel the disappointment, because there was an element of disappointment within myself, because I am responsible for my own health. I am responsible, like that happened because of something that I hadn't dealt with, because of my diet, because of, you know, X, Y, and Z. This is my soul believing that our own illnesses come from what's inside here. So I felt very disappointed in myself that I had let myself go that far, living the lifestyle that I was leading. You know, nobody can live a full life drinking as I was, smoking as I was, partying as I was, and then working 14-hour days, having a family all at the same time. You know, it just doesn't, it's got to stop. It's got to break somewhere, you know. So I had to deal with all of that guilt inside of me as well, and then change my outlook, change my perspective to say, okay, this is what I've done wrong. So now how can I correct it? How can I live a more fulfilling life for myself, for my son, for my family as well? So I think it just comes down to sort of taking responsibility for yourself, really.
Always, and that self-awareness you've alluded to, absolutely. I suppose as you said quite rightly, you know, every situation's got its own context. And for me, just listening to this, I can kind of empathise with this. Not that I've personally had cancer, but through the very challenging situations I've had in my life, I feel there's a sweet spot in the middle, Sam, between what you're talking about and this advocacy of, you know, vulnerability is strength. And I feel that you know, nothing's ever black or white, is it? You know, there's this whole dance. We're humans. We're not robots. For me personally, I understand and respect to the outside world there is that this is the way it is. But in those private moments, just me, myself, and I, because one of my own personal values is to thine own self be true. And if that means that I'm going to cry behind closed doors as a release valve, that's what I'm going to do. And by the way, that's a relatively recent breakthrough over the last 10 years, because it wasn't always that way. And like I've alluded to, I've seen the catastrophic outcomes that comes with bottling it up. And I'm going to be a bit sort of provocative here, listeners, and say, particularly for the more masculine energies, brackets males, because like I've quoted that, big boys don't cry. You can't cry, you're a man. Man up, and all this nonsense that's out there. So I do feel there's a sweet spot in the middle, and none of it's an exact science, but you know, we are humans at the end of the day.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely.
I want to ask you one big question, Sam. So we'll pause to finish off with, but we'll pause the drum roll for the moment. I want to invite you in again to share your contact details, how people can find out more about you, etc., etc.
Sure. So my website is samhalesfitness.co.uk, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram as Sam Hales Fitness. I am a massage therapist and I work on a mobile basis throughout Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. But I do also want to say that I've just started a brand new business, which is to help promote natural therapists and spiritual therapists that are working throughout Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire also, for the purpose of healing and raising our vibrations.
Excellent. What a beautiful cause. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. Right, the question. I want you to imagine, Sam, you and I have just met in a hotel reception or wherever, it doesn't, the venue's irrelevant. But we're going up there, we're getting a lift and we're going up to the next floor. And it takes that lift about 30 seconds to get to the next level. And then when we get to the next level, you'll go one way and I'll go another. And we, work on the assumption we'll never actually see each other again. So we get in the lift and I say, Sam, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's been absolutely phenomenal. I may never see you again, but give me something to cling to, because I've really enjoyed the dance with you, the energy, the whole kind of diversity of what we spoke about. But I want to give that some context, Sam, if I may, because you kind of said my cancer was a blessing in disguise. Sam, I know somebody that's got cancer. In 30 seconds, what do I say to them?
Change is brilliant. If you've got cancer or you've just been diagnosed with cancer, that's life's way of telling you that something has to dramatically change. And change is never, ever scary. It might feel scary because it's a bit different, but once you get into the flow of the change, it's always, always for the better. Change your diet, change your lifestyle, accept more love into your life. I think that is another pinnacle thing, is learning how to accept love and be loved and honor yourself and take time for yourself. Stop working ridiculous amount of hours a week. Why are you working that much? Nobody needs to work that much. Take some time for yourself, for your family, have fun, laugh more, allow yourself these things, because you are here for a reason. You're not here to catch cancer and die. You are here to have passion, to thrive, to live in peace, with inner peace, without conflict, without worry, without anxiety, without depression. You deserve to be happy more than anybody else on this planet. We're step into your soul purpose and thrive, really.
What a fantastic, beautiful answer. I just want to say on a humorous note, though, Sam, that the lift controller had to take it to the next floor 30 seconds. Then he had to bring it down. Then he took it up again. So we went up and down there. But anyway,
Sorry.
No problem. No, please, no. Honestly, great answer. I think I'd like to leave it there, listeners, and leave you to think about, this dance that's taken place between Sam and I around this very, very emotive topic. You be the judge of how it lands with you. And I'm going to sign off now by saying, as I always do, remember, the world's changing. How will you respond?
Thanks very much for listening to this World Game Changers podcast episode. Hopefully you found it interesting and helpful. Drop a line to paul@worldgamechangers.org with any thoughts or questions you may have, and he'll be more than happy to respond. Remember, the world is changing. How will you respond?